What are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do, Matt?
I still haven't decided.
What does your lady friend want you to do?
Well,
that's all that matters.
I think she wanted me to talk to you guys first to find out what you thought.
See if we're willing to come over and dig out your basement.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. I'm Justin Fink. I'll be your host. Over here we have Associate Editor Matt Milham.
Hello.
Senior Editor Patrick McComb.
Hey.
And Jeff is off gallivanting with the boys from Fine Woodworking. So we have Carrie sitting in and working the dials for us. Let's see. You can send us questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can check out the links for this show and watch a video version at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. And we encourage you to send in video questions too, video and audio questions. You can actually just take your iPhone or whatever it is and record a little audio message, like a little 30-second question, and just shoot that over to us at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. If you don't feel like typing it out, stick in some pictures, and we'll get back to you with some
reasonably good advice.
Yeah, some questionable insights.
Yep.
So, first and foremost, we were actually not going to record a podcast today, but then Matt came in my office and he said that his basement flooded yesterday. The second time in a week? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, the first time, I couldn't tell where the water was coming from or if it had just been my washing machine being on the fritz or something like that. Basically just dumping water, missing the pipe and
so possibly twice.
Yeah, because the first time it wasn't that much water. It looked like maybe a gallon. I don't know if I had been down there and checked it the day before. So,
all right, so maybe not.
Could have been from anywhere.
Well, you're ruining my intro.
Yeah.
So then I heard Matt's basement flooded twice in a week, and I thought, well, we should record a podcast then. Because if we don't, then Matt and Patrick are going to sit down and talk about all the options, and then it's going to be old news by the time we get to sit down and record it. So I figured, let's talk about it right here.
Yeah.
So give us a scoop. What's going on? You live in New York.
Yep.
You got a full height basement?
Yep.
Block wall foundation?
Block wall, yep.
Regular old slab, or is it like a rat slab or something?
No, it's a regular slab.
All right.
And the house was built in, I believe, the early 50s.
All right.
And they had some water issues in the past. 26 years ago, B-Dry was called in. They put up a bunch of I-beams to stabilize some of the walls where they were, I guess, perhaps starting to buckle. And they put in an interior perimeter drain around probably 2/3 of the basement, sort of like the main room in the basement.
Is your house on a hill?
It is. It's sort of on a flat spot in the middle of a hill. So there's a big hill behind the house, and then it slopes pretty quickly away from the house.
So let me guess which side the water was coming in.
It was actually coming in the downslope side this time. That's where it flooded this time. Because the drain doesn't extend into this one room in the basement where it seems like there probably was no water issue in the past until about a week ago.
Really? So the water issue has essentially gotten... keep going.
Yeah. So Tuesday night, we're just about ready to go to bed, and my girlfriend goes downstairs to do something, steps in about an inch of water.
Yeah.
And it's probably about half an inch over most of the place. There's just a couple lower spots. About 3/4 of the basement has water in it. So
Did you ever notice that this only happens right before you're going to go to bed?
Yeah.
Like nobody's house floods like at noon.
Yeah.
I was telling him this morning when this happened to me, I stepped out of my bed in the middle of the night and stepped into water, which is really alarming.
I'm picturing you with curlers in your hair.
It's horrible.
Yeah. But the B-Dry technician came out, and they were, as far as we can tell, the system that they installed seems to be working perfectly fine.
And what is that system?
It is essentially they cut through the slab around the perimeter of the basement, at least on 3 walls, and they install like a tile drain.
Perforated pipe?
Yeah, perforated pipe. It looks like it's PVC.
Okay.
And then that drains into a sump, and then there are 2 pumps in there, a primary and a backup that pump the water out.
They don't actually leave it exposed, right? They put the pipe in and some
and then it's buried,
gravel. And
gravel, and then it's buried under more concrete.
Right,
So I mean,
concrete.
it looks, for all intents and purposes, if you look at it, all you see is this little sort of like curtain of plastic or something coming up the wall.
Right.
And that's, I guess, directing the water into that tile drain.
Right.
The perforated pipe. So that all seems to be working fine. Now, this other wall.
Can I ask you one more question about your system? Is that you have that piece of plastic extending up the wall, and it's probably like tacked up there with some kind of fasteners, right?
Yeah, I can't really. I didn't really look at it that closely.
Is there also a gap at the bottom of the wall between the plastic and where they? Sometimes there's like a little plastic lip.
I don't see that.
Okay.
It looks like
So
it's just diving into the concrete.
So essentially the concrete's poured right up tight to it.
That's what it looks like to me, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this system was also, the technician, when he came out, he said, this isn't exactly the way we do it today. So this system is, 26 years old. So
Yeah.
I think they drill holes in the bottom of the wall, though, to allow water to weep from the block down into that drain.
Yeah. I don't think they do that with solid foundations as far as I understand, but for block walls, I think that's what I've heard too. I have a similar system, but I have a poured concrete foundation in most of the house.
Yeah. Anyway,
sorry.
Yeah, so where I was pretty sure the water was coming in, when the technician came in and looked at it, he was like, yeah, this definitely seems like this is where the water's coming in. I didn't know if there was some material on this wall. It was basically fiberglass sheets, like 4x8 sheets of fiberglass that were sort of like tacked to the wall, and I found out that was not part of their system, so I ripped those out.
Do they have a facing on them?
It was sort of like I wouldn't say it was a facing, it's more like a texture.
Like a pebble finish.
Yeah, like a pebbled finish. And
Really?
it tears, once you
it's
put a cut in it,
fiber
it rips pretty easy.
FRP panels. They use them in milk parlors and freezers and this kind of commercial stuff.
Yeah, exactly the stuff. It was called glass steel is what was printed on the back of it. But I can tell you, if steel tears that easily, then we're all in trouble.
Jeez.
But yeah, it took that stuff down, and there was definitely moisture and mold back there. There was no water actively coming through the wall at that time. So just to verify that that's actually where the water was coming from, went outside, turned on the hose, dumped it right there in that flower bed where it seemed like all the water was dumping and coming to the basement. About 20 minutes later, the walls look like they're crying. It's just like coming right through the paint and dripping down.
Do you know what I guess you don't know what the paint on the wall is.
No, I can tell you it's hideous and yellow.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Okay. So this was happening between the block wall and the FRP panel, right?
Yeah, is where it was
so,
sort of dripping
So when
down.
you get that out of the way, now you're actually seeing it like just kind of like seep right through the wall and kind of form into drops and drip down?
Yeah, and the paint's not bubbling or anything. I mean,
Interesting.
It's almost like it's just coming through block or something.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy.
Well, I guess if that was oil-based paint, it probably would just seep right through, right? It's going to find a pore that the paint is not in, so it won't really bubble it. It'll just kind of seep through. Is that jive with you, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm guessing the paint film is cracked, and you just can't see it because paint film would keep out liquid water. Latex paint's going to allow water vapor to pass through, but not bulk water. So my guess is it's compromised.
Micro cracks.
Cracks.
And then it was kind of funny. I turned the hose off, and at first I thought the trickling sound I was hearing was just the sound of the water pouring into this puddle, but it was the water filtering down through the wall was what I was hearing.
So your walls are hollow.
They're hollow, apparently.
Is this the same wall that has the I-beams holding it up?
No, it's not. It's the other side of the house is what has that.
Right.
Actually, there's two walls on
so essentially you've got
side.
like a really good, you obviously had water problems on the slope side of the house.
Uphill side.
Because you have I-beams and a big water handling system there.
Yep.
But on the one remaining wall, which is on the lowest side, you somehow have water coming in now. Talk about what do we got for gutters?
So
First of all, did it rain?
it rained like crazy at my house on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when all of this happened apparently because it was Tuesday night that we walked down and we were like, oh my gosh.
And you've been there for
a little over a year.
Okay.
Yep.
So you've been through all the seasons. Okay.
Yep. And as far as I can tell, I mean, the floor was painted, and I'm guessing that there hadn't been, I don't know how long ago it was painted, but based on the colors, I would say a long time ago, because I don't know that you can buy paint this hideous anymore. But where the water came in contact with the floor, it started to just blister up all over the place. So I think if that had happened in the past, that you would have had the same kind of damage.
Okay.
But yeah, what was your question? No, I lost the train of
Gutters.
thought. Oh yeah, gutters. So
It wasn't about that.
yeah. So
I got distracted because right when you said painted, you paused and had this emphasis on painted, and probably listeners can't hear this, but outside the room there was like this loud boom right when you said painted, and then I just started picturing like thunder noises when Matt was saying something dramatic.
Yeah.
Just like insert like.
yeah, most dramatic thing I'll ever say. Yeah, so this is sort of a bump out. This wall is sort of the front wall of my kitchen.
Okay.
And so there are gutters on either side, but there's no overhang on the
Sure, it's a gable
wall.
It's
Yeah.
a gable bump out, right?
Yeah.
And it's part of the original house, though.
It's
not
part
an
of the
addition.
original house.
Okay.
It's not an addition.
So
When you say bump out, is it actually stick out from the foundation? Is there foundation under this?
There's foundation under it, but yeah, it essentially would be
jogs.
like an L-shaped house. Like
Yeah.
So, but it only comes out maybe 10 feet from the rest of the house. So there's no overhang on that part. And the gutters go on both sides down sort of like back to another gutter that basically brings the water out to the farthest corners of the house on one side and the garage on
So
the
you
other.
have one downspout for that entire backside?
There's two downspouts, one on the left, one on the right. Yeah,
Okay,
and they're
so-
handling all that water.
So you got completely overwhelmed by water, it sounds like.
Yeah. The water was just cascading out of the gutters, but over on by the driveway, like 20 feet away, at least from where the water was coming in here.
Well, I mean, so this is one of those situations where,
Start digging.
Well, but the annoying thing is that this is one of those like, this. How often is this going to happen? So you're going to consider changes that are only going to even be necessary once every who knows how long. So it's like you have to assess the risk factor. And we actually have a good article about this by Steve Basic, and we can put the link to that up on the show notes page. But I think he breaks it down into like 3 general categories, kind of low, moderate, and high risk. And he has different assembly recommendations for each of those scenarios. So I guess yours would be probably moderate, because it's not like it's wet all the time that you have a real problem, but it's like that kind of storm wet situation.
It's a hassle, but I mean, is it really a problem if it's your basement?
Yeah, I mean, my
Sandbags.
first inclination, is just to buy more shelves and get everything up off the floor.
Yeah.
And when it gets wet,
Clean
no
it up.
problem. Yeah, clean it up. Squeegee everything to the sump and, put in the transfer pump.
I have a whole different
Still put it
approach.
in
I think you
buckets.
just got to start digging right away.
Yeah.
Deep, huge,
That's
cavernous.
I know. That's the thing. What do I do? What's sort of the least I can do to make sure this doesn't happen again? I know what the right answer is. Like what I should do is just dig down to the footing.
The
But I
least you can do.
I don't want to do that. Is it possible that I could just dig down 2-3 feet, excavate out that entire flower bed, sort of create a slope and waterproof it? Put down like a few layers of polyethylene sheeting.
So you're kind of like an in-ground roof.
Like an in-ground roof, and then put in a French drain that takes any of that captured water away.
What do you mean when you say French drain? I want to clear it up because I know a lot of people throw around different terms here.
Yeah, so a perforated pipe
Okay.
surrounded by gravel and filter fabric
It drains to daylight.
that drains to daylight. Yep.
It's still going to be a lot of work.
It is going to be a lot of work.
'Cause
But
now-
it's going to
now
be a
you're
lot cheaper
digging-
than putting in extending the B-dry system. Probably.
No, I know, but you're digging. I mean, how far out is that poly going to? Let's say it touches the foundation. How far out do you extend it and slope it down?
that's my question for you guys. What's
Well,
the?
well, I mean, if so,
Can I go 4 feet?
So would you
to be
rather
safe?
dig one trench that's 8 feet deep and
2 feet wide.
2 feet wide, or one that's 6 foot wide,
Yeah.
the full length, and 3 feet deep? It might even end up being more digging
It might possibly
and
be.
more materials. Because if you get that foundation dug out, and first of all, I would do none of this, but the cheapest solution is to do nothing, to get more shelves and get your stuff off the basement
And buy
floor,
a wet vac.
which
Yeah.
it shouldn't be on. You shouldn't have
I've
stuff.
got two.
Everybody go get your cardboard boxes off the basement floor.
Yeah.
And then when it floods, you don't have to freak out. You can just go, well, basement's wet.
Yep. Lesson learned.
If your furnace is at risk, then we got a different problem.
Yeah.
That was the situation with me. I was worried about that.
You were getting that much water that it would
One time I did.
like a foot.
The pump failed, and it was like a foot. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, probably not that much. Maybe 6 inches.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. And I thought I was gonna so I had these offcuts of rigid foam, and I was like surrounding the furnace by adhering these pieces of rigid foam to the floor with canned spray foam, thinking like I'm gonna make a little
dam.
dam. It just goes right through that spray foam. That stuff is not closed cell.
I thought you were going to say that the foam blocks floated away.
Yeah, eventually they did. But it is funny to go down there because there's always like one item that just kind of floats by, like a boot or some plastic box that's now become a boat.
Mice in a paper hat.
Yeah, exactly.
So I told Matt this morning what I did my house in Vermont, we awoke to the flooded basement that was our living space. That was where our master bedroom was in the basement when we first moved in. And so I get up and step in the water, and we turn all the lights on, see how much water is pouring in. It's a disaster. It's terrifying. So my solution was to dig down to the footing and put in perforated pipe and gravel. I backfilled entirely with gravel, my thinking being that stuff could dry if it did get wet, without a cap on it.
I'm putting some things together now because I walked by your office this morning, Patrick, and saw that you had a mini excavator up on the screen.
Yes, exactly.
So you were looking up prices for Matt.
I was saying, Matt, this is what you need is a mini excavator.
To buy it or to rent it?
You can rent it for about $450 a day, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heather and I had already talked about this, the possibility of renting some equipment to deal with the digging. I just, the main reason I don't want to dig all the way down is my septic line comes out in the corner over there as well, and I don't want to hit it.
So it sounds like the water's coming in pretty evenly across the whole wall. So it doesn't sound like you have like a big, often it's like a septic pipe going through the wall where it's found a weak spot and it's pouring in.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like that joint is exposed, and there was clearly no water coming in there. That looked dry, even when we went down when we first noticed that it had flooded.
So here's my thought with the in-ground roof is it really, this is the low part of your house, so is the water really pouring off of your roof and then going underground, or is it just like the ground is so saturated from water pouring down that hill that it's sort of coming at you from all angles and just overwhelming the saturation point of the soil over there?
But he tested it with the hose.
Right.
Had the same result.
Yeah. So you think it was maybe just overflowing the ends of the gutters and pouring down right there?
I don't even think it was overflowing the edges of the gutters. I think it was just there was so much water. I mean, it was raining so hard. There's no way my hose would be able to reproduce that.
Yeah.
But the ground does slope a little bit back toward the house there, and I think it's just probably settling after, like the backfill probably is just settled.
So why not just, instead of the in-ground gunner, why not just dig a trench and put in a pipe, a French drain, as you say?
Pretty much surface laid and
essentially a curtain drain,
yeah.
Right? Which is what you could also do, by the way, if you were in your situation on the uphill side and you didn't want to attack your basement, you could dig a trench like you would slice across the width of the hill with a trench, lay pipe in there, and then backfill it with the gravel.
Yeah, which is
that's
essentially
called a curtain drain.
Yeah, and we do have a swale back there. It's not really a curtain drain, but it is a paver-lined swale.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Where's the barbed wire?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I would do nothing here, but what would you do, Patrick? You would start digging?
No. I mean, I was 20 years younger when I did that project, so I would probably be less inclined.
You only have to do that stuff once, you know? It's like when I scraped my entire house. And now I'm like, this next time I would just scrape where I needed to.
The thing that was different in my situation was that was living space, right? So, I mean, if you just have a basement that your furnace is and you have some boxes of stuff you don't use, like, who cares?
Yeah.
If you have to live down there and if you have, you know, carpeting and paneling and stuff, no, you can't have water coming in.
Yeah. As to your question of the digging, I wouldn't be worried about the septic pipe. I mean,
it's easy to fix because it took me only an hour to fix mine when I ripped it apart. When I was digging.
I mean, if you know where it's going out and you can measure from a corner and then mark approximately where it is and just don't dig anywhere near that.
Yeah.
And then, leave that section undug and then just go in there with a hand shovel and just, kind of knock the dirt to either side into the trenches you've dug, and then you can expose it that way.
Yeah.
Then dig that loose dirt out of the trenches. So you're sort of just avoiding that part and then taking advantage of the hole on either side.
Yeah. You re-waterproof or damp-proof while you have that open? Yeah.
What would I do after opening it?
Yeah.
I would personally go with that something like Delta Dry.
Dimpled membrane.
Dimpled membrane, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is just dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go down and right over that footing too.
Yeah.
Would you insulate while you got that trench open?
If I'm only doing one side of the house, no. Because why do I want to insulate one wall of my basement when all the rest are not insulated? Right?
I guess.
I mean,
yeah.
I have a similar. It's funny you mention that because I sometimes get stuck with this, like, which parts of your house to make better than other parts of your house because you're there. And like you guys know I'm going to be working on my garage, and I'm drawing up the details to submit the plans, and I have 2x4 walls in the basement or in the garage, and then I'm going to do a gable ends up above, and I was going to frame those out of 2x6s and fill them up with insulation. So they're going to be like R23 or whatever it is compared to R15. And I started going, is this worth it? Like, should the walls upstairs be thicker than the walls downstairs, or is it like that's just wasted money at that point? And it's like if all your windows are single pane and then you bump out an addition, should you get double pane glass for those? I don't know.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do, Matt?
I still haven't decided.
What does your lady friend want you to do?
Well,
that's all that matters.
I think she wanted me to talk to you guys first, find out what you thought.
See if we're willing to come over and dig out your basement.
Makes sense. Well, also because we've got a lot of plants in there that we would have to relocate and dig out. A little tree.
I would say you could prepare for further flooding and then watch it. And if it's a recurring problem very often, then it's going to make your decision for you.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen again for another 3 years, then it's like,
why bother?
Yeah. How much time do I spend cleaning this up versus how much time would I spend fixing it, balanced against, is my house at risk here? And the truth is, you have concrete, and concrete doesn't care if it's wet.
And he's got a sump pump. So, I mean, if the water got to be too deep, it's going to start pumping it out, right?
Yeah.
But just remember, your concrete does not care that it's wet.
Right.
Only you care. All right. Now that we're done talking about water, we're going to talk some more about water because we have a leaky shower question. Mike writes, my home in Pennsylvania is relatively new, about 9 years old, but we recently had a tile shower disaster in our master bathroom. I'll spare you the litany of errors that were made during the initial installation, but the damage was quite extensive. When water started dripping through the downstairs ceiling, my inner Justin Fink got the best of me, and I decided to completely gut the bathroom. That's right.
That's right.
You did the right thing. Well, it was a good thing that I did. The subfloor under the shower was so badly compromised that I had to replace it. One of the interior shower walls needed to be rebuilt due to rot. Another one of the shower walls is actually an exterior wall, and this is where things started to get interesting. All right. All of that was just background, folks. So, Mike says, I noticed a musty smell coming from the fiberglass insulation, so I decided to peel it back to see what was going on, only to find that the exterior sheathing was rotted. The interesting thing was that the top of the sheathing was more rotten than the bottom. So my hypothesis is that warm, moist air from the shower was entering the wall cavity, rising, and eventually condensing on the cold sheathing in the winter months. I mean, he says, he also noticed there was some slight moisture damage at the top of almost every stud bay. So I replaced all of the paper-faced fiberglass bats with unfaced bats and added CertainTeed's membrane barrier over the entire wall assembly as a vapor barrier. I used Schluter products for the shower wall and floor to make sure everything was watertight, and he's in the process of installing a bigger bath fan to get the moisture out quickly. Is there anything else that I missed, and what do you think of this fix? I mean, that all sounds good to me. I think his hypothesis is good too.
I think he had a bad shower enclosure. It was probably not waterproofed, right? And so water was getting through his tile and getting back there and had nowhere to go, so it accumulated. And
yeah, I mean, when he says, I'll spare you the litany of errors made during the initial installation, it makes me wonder what was behind the tile.
Yeah.
Because that's often all this is. I mean, yeah, it could just be moisture. It could be that, like he says, in the winter months, you have an insanely humid space with an exterior wall that's going to be cold. Mm-hmm. And so when that moist air seeps into the wall and it hits that cold sheathing, it's going to condense. And it would make sense that would happen. It would sort of make sense that it would happen at the top. I mean, I guess especially if the insulation wasn't very tight and full in that cavity.
Sure. It would be colder.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm wondering is what was behind that tile, because if there was nothing, if it was just tile over cement board or tile right over to the drywall, then that's just dumb that you think that grout is going to be waterproof.
A lot of people think tile is waterproof, and it might be, but grout is not.
Yeah.
So walls behind tiled showers get wet, and you need to have a completely waterproof enclosure behind your tile.
Yes.
Top to bottom.
And the old school method for that would have been, layers of felt paper, the tar paper.
Or PVC.
PVC membrane. And now we, of course, have lovely products like Schluter and
trowel applied water membranes.
Yep. And you can still get PVC. Noble is another company that makes stuff. Weedy board. We've gone over these in a couple episodes ago, so listen back to that.
So it sounds like he got his shower detailed correctly now, and it's not going to be water coming from the shower getting into his walls.
Yes. And he's putting a bigger fan. That's great. I would recommend maybe putting a timer on that so that even after you switch it off, it still stays on for a predetermined amount of time that you can choose so that it makes sure it clears all the air out of the bathroom. For anybody who doesn't know what that membrane is, it's like what they would refer to as like a smart vapor barrier. It makes itself more permeable when it needs to be, essentially. How the hell it works, I have no idea.
I've asked people to explain that to me, and I've never gotten a satisfactory answer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you invent such a thing, but it's there, and you staple this over the studs and over the insulation. And of course, he said that he went with unfaced bat insulation because you wouldn't need a facing because you don't need a vapor barrier anymore because now your membrane is your air barrier.
Vapor barrier.
Vapor barrier, sorry. And there's other companies that make that stuff. What is that? What's that company in New York? 475?
Yes.
Was it 475 Building Supply or something like
Yes.
that? That's a great place to hop on their website and check out some of their stuff.
They have some good technical information too.
Really good. Good support, good advice. And they sell a lot of European stuff I think they're a big pro-klima distributor.
And they sell these air sealing tapes that you can't buy at other places. Cool stuff.
Yeah, they use a lot of like paper-based products in Europe for these jobs. I mean, not that craft paper is paper, but they use like full sheets going across. In the place of where this guy was using membrane, you can get kind of paper products that do the same thing, which are kind of cool.
And they're some are like fabric-like things too.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the other one. Oh, Intello Wrap, I think, is it. We've seen a lot of guys use that. That's another option. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to throw at the end here. Mike said it also occurred to me that had a product like Zip System been used on the exterior of my house, this problem would have likely been worse. So it seems like getting the details of the wall right, especially in the bathroom, are crucial as houses become more and more airtight.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Yeah, I see where Mike's going with this, but I don't think it's accurate. I think it is important that you get the details of a wall right as houses get more and more airtight because they don't have as much energy moving through them to give you drying. Yeah. But having it, well sealed on the outside would mean that you're going to have less cold air coming in. I mean, assuming your insulation's in good shape and it's in contact with the sheathing and all that stuff.
The sheathing,
that's going to help, but the sheathing's not really the problem.
Yeah, the sheathing would have been the same temperature, whether it's Zip or commodity OSB or whatever.
It's not drying to the outside in this case.
Yeah, and I think he's thinking that the facing on the Zip is going to prevent moisture from going out.
Yeah. I mean, if you lived in like Arizona and it was summer and you had this moisture leaking into your wall, then maybe some leaky sheathing would help you because it would start to dry to the outside, but in the winter, it's just going to freeze before it, unless it was like a very dry, mild temperature winter. Am I thinking this through right? Does that jive with you guys?
I think so.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But
all right.
I mean, whatever WRB he had over that would have served the same purpose as the facing on the Zip, I think. So, I mean, if he's worried that it would have, prevented it from drying out,
And I think the problem here is not water vapor, it's bulk water from his leaky shower. And I don't think it's fair to look at the rest of the house similarly.
But he said he noticed it in several of the other stud bays. That's the only reason I was going down that path.
I think it's just because of that water was migrating. Once the studs get wet, it's gonna travel to adjacent cavities.
Yeah.
Fine.
Get your shower right, people.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
Yeah, you're injecting a whole bunch of water inside your house right next to an exterior wall. So, spend a few extra bucks. Now let's take some time for a little bit of housekeeping. This episode of the Fine Homebuilding Podcast is brought to you in part by Titebond. Bonding heavy materials to vertical surfaces is a real challenge. To meet that challenge, you need a durable adhesive with grabbing power you can trust. Titebond's Ultimate Tight Grab Adhesive has twice the vertical strength of most other adhesives and is uniquely designed for bonding a wide variety of building materials, including stone, brick, and concrete. Tight Grab is ideal for indoor and outdoor applications and is 100% waterproof. Available at building supply stores, lumber yards, and home improvement stores. Visit Titebond.com for more details. All right, Ken writes to us, I tore down and am rebuilding a small deck off my mudroom after having replaced the rim joist on the house because the previous deck builder didn't properly flash when the deck was built 20 plus years ago. It's amazing how many times this happens to people. It's like, what were they thinking 20 years ago when they put these ledgers on the house and didn't put any flashing on?
I think a lot of it had to do with like how a deck project was sold to DIYers. Like, you pick up your little brochure at the home center and it tells you about all the structure of how to build a deck.
Just
but
nail this thing on.
It doesn't mention that at all.
Yeah. Man. Anyway, Ken says the deck is small and low enough to not require a permit per the county. The mudroom door is the main entrance we use throughout the day. Because of the way it is situated on my house, I have a few questions about the best way to proceed with this deck. All right, we're going to take these one at a time. So 1, the frost depth in our area, which is near Seattle, calls for 18-inch footings.
Does that mean deep?
I guess.
Does it freeze in Seattle?
I guess for 18-inch depth. But this deck is nestled in a U-shaped area between the dining room, mudroom, and second floor roof of the basement level garage. And the dining room and mudroom have basement below. So the foundation footings on all 3 sides are almost 8 feet deep. If I understand correctly, the DCA 6 says the footings of the deck must be as deep as the footings of the house for any deck footings that are within 5 feet of the house. So the DCA 6 is what does that stand for, Patrick?
I don't know, man. I think it's
Design Code for Acceptance.
There you go.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
DCA is it's like an AWC publication, right? American Plywood Association. Isn't that what that stands for?
I thought it was the Forest Products.
American Wood Council, sorry. Yeah. AWC is American Wood Council, and they have a series of these documents, DCA 1, DCA 2, and DCA 6 is about decks. And it's a prescriptive deck construction guide. So you look at this thing, which is 44 pages long, free on the internet. We'll throw the link up on the show notes page. And it will basically give you every code detail that you need to know to build a deck that's going to pass code and,
and be safe.
I won't say most, but I think a lot of building departments just defer to this.
It's part of the code now.
Yeah, and it was very important years ago when
decks were not.
Yeah, decks were just kind of mysteriously left out of the code. So people used this instead, and now I think it's just kind of mirrored.
Now
it's
in the code.
But you get this for free.
Yeah.
Code books cost money. So so anyway, Ken is saying that he is right in his belief that the DCA 6 says that if you have deck footings within 5 feet of the house footings, those deck footings have to go all the way down to the same level.
Yeah, and it has that in all caps in DCA 6.
Every time they mention it, it's in all caps. And he said that in his case, that's all of the footings will be within 5 feet of the house. So I had wanted to use footings instead of pier blocks like the previous deck had, but this seems like way too much digging. The DCA 6 does not mention piers. Will they still be the best way to go? What is the proper way to use them? This is where I'm getting a little lost. What does he mean when he says it does not mention piers? So how do you guys...
I think...
I call concrete footings piers a lot.
Yeah, and I think he maybe is not understanding what the systems are that they're showing. They're showing a footing, which is just the part at the bottom, and then they're not describing the parts coming up as piers per se, but that's essentially what is coming up off that
What
footing.
parts of the bottom are you talking about?
Well, the footing being the part that the post
but
or whatever
they show concrete tubes. They show that right in the document.
Yeah, but I think it's because they're not describing those specifically as piers is the confusion.
Okay, well, is it safe to say we're treating those synonymously?
I think so.
A round concrete footing is a pier to me. I guess it could be
for
square
a deck
too. Yeah. Somewhere online I read that pier blocks still have to be buried, although the previous deck just had them floating around. Okay, so when he says piers, he's talking about the pier blocks. Mm-hmm. That's where I was getting thrown off. He's talking about the precast little concrete pyramid
take
shape.
a 4x4.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Must be nice if you can use those.
Yeah.
Anywhere, because we certainly can't do that in New England. Imagine how easy it would be to build something if you could just put
right on the ground,
stupid little blocks down, build right on top of it instead of digging. We have to dig to 42 inches here. Is it the same for you in New York, Matt?
I don't remember what it is, but yeah, it's 4 feet probably.
Yeah,
and through rocks and glacial till, and
we've got the same great soil conditions that you guys have here.
Brutal. What are you talking about, Patrick? You live on the beach.
I do. I live on a sandbar.
Your problem is you can't get the sand out of the hole before it slides back in and fills it up again. Okay, so I would not recommend those. If your code says you have to go down 18 inches, it's because they don't want
frost heaving.
Frost heaving, yeah, and it's not. It sounds like a lot of digging. Yeah, it is. You have to do a lot of digging.
Here's another suggestion.
I have a great one too. Go ahead.
Helical pier.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
And this is a perfect opportunity to get helical pier. They bring in this little rig with a auger on the end of it, and it turns in what looks like a big steel post with corkscrew blades on the end of it, and you get a verifiable bearing capacity based on how hard it is to put this thing in the ground. And usually when they stop turning, you're done. Your guy who put these in for you cuts them off, welds a U-shaped saddle to the top of it, and you put your beams in there, and your joists go in between or across the two of the beams you've had put in.
Yeah, it's just like and the whole thing is you're building the same day that these things go in.
And what's awesome is you don't have any site disturbance. It's very quick. I bet.
Yeah, it's like these little rigs.
Yeah, it's about the size of a Toro Dingo. You guys can look that up online to see. It's a little tiny skid steer loader, except the one for the helical piers has a power head on that turns the pier in.
There's also another option, which I would loosely lump into the same category. They're not helical, though. I know at least one product called Diamond Pier, and it looks like the same little pier blocks that you're talking about. It's like that little pyramid block on the top, but it drives these pipes down at opposing angles and down through the block and into the ground. So it sort of creates this wider footprint that you don't see underground. Actually, I think that they are also some sort of, no, they're hammered. Okay, so they're essentially like giant pipe pins that you hammer, from, I don't know, 3 feet to 5 feet into the ground. And that will allow you to get by without having to pour concrete as well. I don't know what they cost, though. I mean, all this kind of hinges on whether you have a local rep in your area or a local person who can do the work, right?
The
diamond piers you can actually do yourself if you rent a big...
You need a broto hammer, right?
Yeah, a big one.
Yeah, demo hammer.
Yeah.
The longtime author I've worked with, Jeremy Hess, has the Techno Metal Post franchise for southeastern Pennsylvania or central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And those dealers are all over the country. So
it's definitely growing.
Yeah. And I see the use for those, they're just great. They're really, it's awesome. How fast.
Yeah.
No digging.
Yeah.
And even with a concrete footing and pier, you're guessing on the bearing capacity of that based on your local soil conditions.
Yes.
This has actually got a number on it that's verifiable.
Yes. And I mean, you'd have to check with your local, well, you're not getting an inspection, I guess, but I would suspect that going this route, because they hand you a piece of paper at the end that says what your bearing capacity is, that you can probably just go right from these being put in the ground to framing without having to wait for the inspector to come over and go
and look in the hole.
This hole looks good.
Yeah.
Pour the concrete. That's the worst part. All right, second question. Having just replaced the mudroom rim joist, I would prefer to have the deck be built as non-ledger. DCA 6 implies that non-ledger decks still should be connected to the house. Is that the case, or can I leave the frame an inch or so away from the wall on all sides? So the answer is yes to both of those. The DCA 6 does say it has to be connected to the house, and yes, you can leave it an inch or so away from the house, as far as I'm concerned.
With spacers.
With spacers, yeah. So you have to follow the nailing pattern that's in the code, the fastening pattern, rather, and that will vary based on the joist span, what you're driving into for a rim joist, because, if he said his house was built, he's the one who said 9 years ago, right? Oh, that was a different question?
That's
a different question.
Yeah, this was over 20 years.
So, I mean, he probably doesn't have an engineered rim joist, but that will affect things. If you have solid wood, how much the sheathing is over that wood rim joist, all that stuff is variable for what the spacing is of those fasteners. So if it's a ledger-supported deck, which means that it's actually supported by the house.
Carrying the...
It's a ledger-supported deck. You're splitting the load of the deck between the house and a beam of some kind on the outside. Non-ledger supported or freestanding deck is the whole thing is on beam and piers. But you still have to attach it to the house for lateral resistance.
So it doesn't fall over.
Right. So those lateral load connectors they have to put on every deck, those still apply. And fastening it to the house still applies, although you don't have to fasten it with as many fasteners as if it was ledger supported. Like, I just did some rough numbers on here, and it looks like you're probably in the neighborhood of fasteners spaced every 20 inches or so. Whereas they can go as often as 6 or 8 inches, depending on how big the deck is and what you're going into and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so for spacers, I like that little product, the little hockey puck one, the deck to wall spacer.
Yep.
And that's just, it looks like a hockey puck with a hole in it. You fasten through that and into the house, the rim, the sheathing, whatever it is. But they also have main deck bracket, like the state of Maine deck bracket. That's a good one. It looks like a little section of an eye joist.
And that's meant to be ledger supported. That's meant to be load bearing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but it would also act as a drainage spacer if you wanted some gap. I don't know. Where does the code come down now on stacking washers?
I think you're allowed to do that.
You can still do it?
Yeah.
Is there how many you can stack? Okay.
I think it's 1/2 inch stack of washers.
Yeah.
I would get stainless if it were me.
Galvanized, no?
Why?
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard to replace those rusty washers, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine trying to like hold the washers up behind it and put another bolt through?
I think you'd have to go stainless there just because it's so easy.
What's the order of events? I've never done the washer technique. How do you do that?
I did it.
Because you have to slide the bolt through, put the washers on the bolt, and then put the ledger on, and then slide those bolts into the holes that you've drilled to the rim board, all without the washers falling off. And like the full length ledger.
Yeah.
So is it as awful as it sounds?
I'm pretty sure we started driving everything, kind of hung some washers, and then stuck it up there and had a bunch of guys just sort of hold it in place. So all the washers were there, and then somebody just went through and drove all the
fasteners.
All the fasteners. So they were everything was held.
What? You using carriage bolts or what?
No, what was going through? I can't remember.
Did you just have threaded rod coming out of the house and you were putting the bolts on the outside? I mean, the nuts on the outside?
It's been so long, I can't
Can
remember.
you do that?
I don't know.
I guess you could.
I would just like tack the ledger up there with the space and then take the washer stack and...
You'd never get it up there with a half inch with your little hand.
With your little...
Yeah. You know what I would do? I'm inventing it right now. I would slide the bolt in from the outside, put the washers on the bolt, and then put a little dab of hot glue or something to keep them in place.
Oh, brilliant.
Because that's going to just kind of compress and fall out of the way once you start tightening the sucker down.
Yeah.
The deck-to-wall spacers are kind of cool because you can screw them on.
Yeah, they have holes for mounting screws.
Yeah.
That is a smart thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I smell an article. Okay, last thing. The dryer vent, laundry room fan, and basement bath fan all vent out through the joist on the dining room side, parallel to the deck joist. What is the best way to handle the vents when they're under a deck?
I'm curious.
Yeah.
That's really close to the ground, right? If it was higher up, it wouldn't seem to be as big a deal, but I think you got to extend those to the edge of the deck.
Yeah, but so wait a minute. We got the dryer vent, laundry room fan, and basement bath fan. All right, all those are going to be having moist air in them, which means that you got to pour them into tubing that's going to be pitched down away, because as soon as it gets in there, it's going to condense. I mean, if you can at all move those things, but 3 of them, man, you got dealt a bad hand here. I would not want this thing just venting under my deck.
It's only 2 feet off the ground too, I think is what he said.
You're not gonna have any. And he said it's in a U-shaped section of the house. So it's gonna have no airflow.
Right.
Yeah. It's going to be trapped in there pretty much.
Yeah. That's a good way to rot your deck from the inside out. I guess you could extend them, but that's pushing it for. I mean,
How
dryer
far
vent's
that
not
fan's
meant to
gonna
go
push.
that far. And
How long is this deck?
Was it 9 by 11? No. Yeah, 9 by 11.
So it depends on how far away it is to the outlet inside, right?
yeah. Well, you could always extend them up and then. Oh God, this is a nightmare.
Yeah, extend it up right into the soffit. No. Don't.
I mean, you could extend it up enough to be at like a hose spigot height.
So you're gonna
that
have like
it's-
a little snorkel there on the 3 of them on the deck.
Gotta dress it up somehow. You gotta get creative. I don't know. This is not. I know what the temptation is, and I can tell you what's probably gonna happen.
Is
here
don't do anything.
He's not gonna do anything. He's gonna.
And if they're run very intermittently, I think that's probably what I would do too. But if they're run all the time, that's not a good thing.
No, it is not. I don't know what to tell you here, except try to avoid that.
Try and move those outlets, right?
Yeah. If you do end up extending them, I guess maybe consider some sort of an inline fan. I mean, maybe all 3 of them can go into the same pipe at that point or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
I probably wouldn't do that though. They're gonna look like hell extending out to the outside edge of your deck too. Like who wants to dress up the edge of their new deck with vent hoods?
Yeah.
Like a commercial kitchen or something, like a laundromat. Anyway, good luck with that. That's all we got for this week. We will catch up with everybody again next week for another round of the beautiful questions here at the lovely Fine Home Building Podcast. So until next time, this is Justin for Matt and Patrick saying keep craft alive and happy building.
Woo-hoo.